This is the Smallmouth Crush Podcast Season 2. If you're a hardcore angler, you've come to the right place. This podcast that will interview some of the top local and regional anglers in North America. Anglers who consistently finish near the top in both largemouth and smallmouth bass fishing tournaments. Travis and his guest will discuss techniques and strategies used to help these anglers stay so consistent and help you become a better angler and gain an edge on your body of water. And now, here's your host of the Smallmouth Crush Podcast, Travis Manson.
Hello, welcome to the Smallmouth Crush Podcast. My name is Travis Manson, and here we go, talking with some of the top local, regional, and up-and-coming pros when it comes to tournament bass fishing all over North America. We've had quite a few from all over the country, not only smallmouth, but some largemouth sticks as well. A little different theme here for season 2. And we're learning a ton. And I'm glad we got all the viewers and listeners hanging out with us today. We got a great guest lined up. Of course, we got to talk about the Real Shot. You know, they've been our sponsor of the podcast, and they have some great baits over there at therealshot.com. Anything and everything you want fishing related, I really encourage you to check them out because I'm going to give you a discount code, SmallmouthCrush15. You're going to get 15% off your first order. So if you need some tackle, which we all do, and a lot of times, I know these guests, they make us spend all this money on these techniques and tackle and baits that they're talking about. I'm guilty of it as well. So if you hear or see something you want to pick up, I encourage you to head over to therealshot.com and use the code SmallmouthCrush15 and take advantage of that little discount. Well, let's get into it. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Travis.
Super excited. Wisconsin boy.
Yeah.
Originally from that part. It's a great place to bass fish. There's a lot of different opportunities. You know, you have the rivers, you have the inland lakes, you have the Great Lakes, and you got a lot of unique stuff going on there. You're never too far away from a good bite, it seems, in that part of the country. Although they don't get giant like they do down south, but it can be pretty fun because a lot of these fish haven't seen a bait, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you can get away from the crowd sometimes.
Yeah, when I go down south, it's like terrible. Up here, it's awesome.
Yes, there's boats everywhere. But that's what makes it interesting. You know, before we get into it, Jay, if you could, real quick, just give us a little background on yourself, what you got going on as far as in the fishing world, and really kind of what are some of your home bodies of water that you fish now?
Yeah, so my name is Jay Przekurat. I live in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, which is like centrally located. I'm 22 years old. So recently I started fishing the Bassmaster Opens in 2019 as a co-angler. And in 2019, I was actually fortunate enough to win as a co-angler in like their last tournament, which, you know, gave me funding to do it again. So I did it again as a co-angler in 2020 and ended up winning another time in 2020.
Crazy.
So I had 2 open wins as a co-angler. So at that point I was like, well, you know, it's probably a good time to jump over to the boater side because I had the funding, you know, I had a boat, I had a truck. It wasn't the greatest truck, and I had friends that helped me out. And so I signed up as a boater just this year, and I fished 2 circuits. I fished the Southerns and I fished the Centrals. The Southerns went okay. I think I finished like mid-20s or 30s in points. I think I finished somewhere in there. And then in the Centrals, I was actually fortunate enough to take second place in the points, and I qualified for the 2022 Bassmaster Elite Series.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean,
so it's been a crazy last 3 years of my life.
Sometimes it works out that way. You
right.
know, two wins on the co-angler side, and now you're fishing with the big boys. This coming
it's gonna
season.
be.
That's pretty incredible. What are you looking forward to the most?
I'd have to say just the competition, just being in that environment. Like the Bassmaster Open environment is good. Don't get me wrong. Like it's 250 guys, locals, you know, there's pros from MLF, Bass, but like just being in that environment where it's like the top 90 guys that you've been watching your whole life, and like you're right in the middle of them, is going to be like, yeah, that'll be definitely surreal. I mean, yeah, it's going to be challenging, obviously. I mean, I've thought about it every day since I qualified.
Sure.
You know,
right.
All the money on the line, everything. I mean, nothing's easy in this industry. It never is.
So what made you want to, I guess, fish as a co-angler, 2 years ago and start fishing across the country at a young age? Was it
Sure.
to get that experience or just kind of get a taste of what it's
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. So my whole story was I started fishing locally when I was like, I want to say I was like 17, 18 is when I started actually jumping into like team tournaments with a buddy that I live here with. And, he was like, yeah, man, like we can go fish these tournaments. And I'm like, at the time, I just fished some league tournaments at night. And he's like, I think we can do good in these tournaments. And I'm like, these guys have been fishing these bodies of water around Wisconsin for 30, 40 years. And, they go to the same bodies of water every year. And it was that first year we jumped in. It was in 2018. And actually, I think it was the last tournament of the year. We actually ended up winning one of their team tournaments. And like, that was when I first realized I was like, wow, we can actually like hang with these guys and like compete. Well, then it was that following year in 2019. It was that winter. I had a buddy that lived up in Sturgeon Bay. He offered me a spot to fish as a co-angler with him and travel with him. So that was like basically just offered to me. Like, it wasn't even like I went out and did that. So, he offered that to me and I was like, of course I'm going to do it. I mean, 4 tournaments a year at the time it was. And, I fished those 2 years and here we are now.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So fishing on the Elite Series this coming season, you're not going to be able to fish too much back in Wisconsin, I would imagine.
No.
Is that kind of a, I mean,
That's
you've had some good success.
Yeah.
What are some bodies of water you really enjoy in that region of the country in Wisconsin?
I love fishing like the river systems in Wisconsin. So like anywhere north of like Stevens Point area, once you get up towards like Tomahawk, and then you get up towards like Minocqua, east of there, and then there's some other lakes, out west. But yeah, like a lot of those flowage reservoirs up there, I really like to fish just because it's hard to, they're kind of like tricky to figure out, but like once you get them figured out, like there's some really like freakishly big fish up north that never even get touched.
So the flowage it's a little different terminology in Wisconsin versus some of the lakes down south and how they're set up. But really, a flowage, I'm trying to think how we can relate that to some of the viewers and listeners from other parts of the country would understand. It's part of the river system. It's part of the Wisconsin River, right?
Yeah.
And it just opens up just like, say, a Guntersville or a Pickwick.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's basically what it is. Yeah, it's a river system, but it's formed into a lake, and obviously there's glacial rock and stuff like that.
Yes, it's very unique as far as the structure. You're going to see similarities to like a Guntersville or Chickamauga or something like that, but you also have a lot of crazy stuff that goes on the flowage as far as I'm just thinking some of the times I fished at bogs and different marsh tub
there's
stuff,
some crazy
and
looking stuff,
right? Like places you'd step off the boat and you'll fall up to your neck in muck and there's water. Like, it's crazy. And those fish hang
boulders.
out. Yeah. And those fish hang out and that stuff. What are some of your favorite techniques? What are some things that you've had a lot of success in the past on?
A lot of top waters. I like to throw top waters up north. I like to fish finesse for smallmouth. Generally, like when I go fish up north, if the lake has smallmouth, like typically in a tournament situation, that's what you're looking for, just because they're the easiest to, I want to say target, but they're the easiest to like consistently keep up with, because that's like the main population of fish. Now there's largemouth in a lot of those fisheries too, but sometimes they either get overfished or, there's only small areas that they can hold.
So you prefer targeting those smallmouth and
smallmouth with
way.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if technique really plays a huge role up there, just because like when you put it in front of one up there, like 9 times out of 10 he's usually gonna bite it.
Wow.
Just because they don't see a lot of baits up there.
What are some other areas in Wisconsin that you've had success on as far as fishing goes? Because there's so many different places. I mean, have you been able to get out to the Sturgeon Bay and the Mississippi River and experience some of that?
Yeah, so I would say other than the flowages up north and stuff like that, I like to get over to Sturgeon Bay. I fished there, probably not as enough as I should, but me and my dad go over there and fish the Sturgeon Bay Open. We fished it since I was probably 15 or 16 years old, and we've had good success in Sturgeon Bay. I think just this year, actually, we took third in the Open up there, and I've also had pretty good experience down in like the Madison area, Madison Chain, Green Lake. Love Green Lake. I've had some really good success there, and I've just been kind of dabbling around like the La Crosse area just the last couple of years. I haven't been able to get over there as much as I would have liked to, but just this last year I fished a regional there in August, and I did okay. I think I took 8th in that regional, so I've had some experience over in the cross. But yeah, I've been in most places in Wisconsin that have larger tournaments.
How about outside of the state of Wisconsin, besides those events you fished as a co-angler? I mean, now that you're gearing up to fish at the higher level, do you have the experience, or are you trying to get ramped up? Are you making any travel plans here to learn some of that stuff?
Yeah, I'm definitely making like pre-practice travel plans just to like kind of bounce around, not necessarily like fish the bodies of water, but like just get a track going on the lake, see what everything looks like, time of year, stuff like that. Honestly, I haven't had a ton of experience on like multiple bodies of water. Now, granted, I've had experience through the Opens. I fished 6 tournaments this year, and then I fished 8 the previous 2 years combined, 4 and 4 from each of the Opens. So, I mean, yeah, I've been to some bodies of water. Actually, just this fall, we were on Table Rock, which is a really cool learning experience in the fall. That was a crazy tournament just for that U.S. Open. And yeah, other than that, I fished over in Minnesota a decent amount. Just some, I think one of them was another bass regional tournament. And then I also fished a couple of classic bass tournaments over there as well.
So when you did well in the Opens this past season, it was a Central, you said?
Yep, Centrals.
And what were those 3 bodies of water? And really interested how you broke those bodies of water down. If you fished them in the past, what was your mindset?
Sure.
Take me to the first one and kind of walk me through that.
Sure. So yeah, the first one was on Pickwick Lake, and that was end of April. So I've never been to Pickwick. I got no info or anything. I just traveled with a buddy, whatever. And so we got down there. And, you know, looking at past, obviously I look at all the info online. You know, I believe that's what everybody should do when they go to a tournament. I mean, the amount of info that we have now, you know, just from past tournaments, techniques, times of year, things that should be happening that maybe are, maybe they aren't. I mean, it never hurts to look. Yeah, so we got down there, and, you know, I'm not like a huge ledge fisherman or anything. So I kind of like veered away from that because it was still the end of April. You know, fish were still spawning, but they were dropping the water as we were going through practice, and it kind of kept getting tougher and tougher. Yeah, so my mindset for Pickwick was kind of wishy-washy. Like I caught some up shallow. I caught some in like 10 feet of water, you know, dragging a Carolina rig, slowing down, things like that. A lot of graphing. It actually came down to the first day in that tournament. I found a shad spawn the last day of practice, which I hadn't found the whole week. And the last day of practice that morning, I actually found a shad spawn on a shell bar. It was like pull up there and catch as many as you wanted in like 20 minutes. They were busting everywhere, and you could just throw whatever chatterbait, spinnerbait. And
how did you notice that? Did you notice it running? Did you look over and see something going on, or were you working down a stretch? How did you actually key in on that?
I'd never saw anything. There was no boats around, and I was graphing down this shell bar, and I'm like, well, let's just like go up on top and see if there's anything up in like 4 feet of water on top of the shell bar. And I was just throwing around a crankbait. I think I was throwing, and all of a sudden, the first fish I caught was a catfish. And I was like, whatever. Right. And you know, at the time I was using forward facing sonar. And I looked around, and there was just like clouds everywhere, and I'm like, that could be something. And that was when I tied on a white chatterbait and threw it out my first cast and caught like a 3.5 pounder. and I taloned down on top of the shell bar, and it was just like anywhere you casted on top of the shell bar, they were just
very
everywhere.
cool.
So, yeah. So we get back to that story. The first day of the tournament comes around, you know, I could hardly sleep that night, whatever. So I roll up to the shell bar, you know, me not having a ton of experience with shad spawns or whatever, you know, whatever people want to call it down south. I roll up to the shell bar, and we had I believe it was I don't know exactly what wind it was, but we had a really strong wind that day, and it blew on top of the shell bar like all night. And at the time I was like, maybe it'll affect it, maybe it won't. Well, I rolled up to that shell bar and there wasn't even a fish there. I never even had a bite.
Really?
Like not nothing. As soon as I put down the trolling motor, like it was, you know, you just look out and there's just like barren Dead Sea. And I'm like, well, today's either going to be really good or really bad.
Right.
So that day we ended up getting this giant rainstorm at like 11 o'clock, and I'm still sitting on 0 fish at like, it was like 11:30. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure you know how it is. I mean, you start getting towards noon and you're still 20 miles away from the ramp. And my co-angler, you know, he starts talking, oh, I got some spots we could try. I'm like, you know, you get to that point and it's like, no, we'll stay here. And I made it over to this one stretch I had a couple bites on in practice. I knew it was a good stretch, but I was kind of like trying to figure out the whole shad spawn deal because I knew those fish had to have been somewhere. And turns out a guy did catch them, but he caught them off in like 17 feet of water. They just slid off. And I think it was one of the guys in the top 5, actually. And so I went and I started doing this Carolina rigging deal that I found in practice. And little did I know I think on like my 3rd cast, I caught one close to 6 pounds. And then within like 2 hours, I had over 17 pounds and we headed her back to the ramp. And
nice. That was a change. In emotions.
Yeah, that was, that day was, so that was, that's what started my whole season. And then roll into day 2, my Carolina rig bite kind of died. I don't know if I hurt those fish too bad or if they were just.
So did you go check on that shad spawn or no?
Yeah, I went and checked it again and
not there. Okay.
No. So then I went back to the Carolina rig deal and I think I caught a small limit. And then I had actually one of my travel partners, Adam Nye, the day before, he informed me of the same shad spawn deal going on, but on docks, which I also did find some in practice, fishing some docks. So I'm like, all right, after my Carolina rig deal kind of went off, I went and slid up to some docks. Yeah, I think I caught like 5 or 6 shad spawn under docks, and that brought me up to like 15, almost 16 pounds, and which was good enough for, you know, 17th in an open, which I was very happy with.
Wow, that's a great story. I definitely want to hear a little bit more about the next 2 events. But before we go there, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back.
You're listening to the Smallmouth Crush podcast. Don't rush out to the water just yet. We'll be right back after this break.
Hey guys, Smallmouth Crush wanted to talk to you about a service I offer called Smallmouth Crush One-on-One. And it's an hour-long consultation with myself and you over the internet. We're going to record our conversation. You can ask me anything and everything fishing related. Whether you want a new set of eyes on a body of water that you fish all the time, or maybe you're wanting to learn how to break down a new body of water, we can talk about different techniques, different ways I approach fishing when it comes to both smallmouth and largemouth. And I've had a lot of great feedback from everyone who has signed up. It's real simple. You just head on over to my website or check the link in any of my YouTube videos and you can sign up right there. I'll get an email that lets me know you signed up, and then I will send you back a bunch of questions as well as a date and time that works best for you. And you'll get to hang out with me over the computer for an hour. Pretty cool little deal. What do we got here? What do we got here? We got something on the line. All right, he's a biggin. I'm gonna have to deal with him. Don't forget to sign up, Smallmouth Crush 1-on-1.
So going to Smith Lake, the next stop, what was that like? What was your experience there?
Yeah, so Smith Lake was previously canceled actually in April. So they moved it to October, which that time of year, you know, fall time in the South, I knew it was going to be tough. I mean, every results you look at, spotted bass in the fall and those herring lakes in the fall and all that, which I knew some about. I had some previous knowledge from the years before fishing as a co-angler, which definitely helped a ton. And so I went into Smith Lake, I think, yeah, we rolled in there like 1st of October, and it was still pretty warm. Water temps are still pretty warm. I had a chance to fish a tournament actually before the official practice for the Open, because we went down there a little bit early. I fished a tournament with a buddy, Adam Rasmussen, down there, and we actually finished, I don't remember exactly where we finished, but it might have been in the top 10 or we were 12th or something in a Smith Lake Open bass tournament. It's like one of their big tournaments down there. We caught like 12 pounds of spotted bass, which was, you know, for down there, that's like a good weight. So we went through the whole week of practice, and I actually had a pretty good practice in that tournament. I was feeling great about the first day. The water levels were rising. You know, I was finding fish shallow. I was actually sight fishing a lot of largemouth that I could actually see as the water was coming up. They go into the back of these, there's like drains that come into Smith Lake, and they like dump in. So I was finding some good fish around there. So yeah, the first day of the tournament rolls around. Well, we get I think it was like a 2.5 hour fog delay. And I had a short day the first day. So I had to be doing at 2, and we didn't leave the dock until like 9:30 almost.
Jeez.
And yeah, so I get out there and I'm like, I already had this game plan that I was going to run from one end to the other and burn like 40 gallons of gas. And I'm like, okay, I got to scratch that. So yeah, I started on my first spot, and I caught one in like my first 2 minutes of fishing, which like calmed me down like considerably. Like I was like, okay, like I can get 5. I can do this one an hour. We'll be good. I ended up catching, let's see. No, I went for a long dry spell after that. I think like 2.5, 3 hours without a keeper. Lost one. Caught a keeper spotted bass, so I had 2. And then I pulled up to this, like, I call it like a magical dock, because there was nothing there the day before. There was nothing there in practice. And I pulled up to it on tournament day, and I pitch into it. My jig gets hung like on the top of this brush pile behind this dock. So I'm like watching my jig as I'm like just about to pull it over this limb. This like 3-pound largemouth comes up and just, he literally came out of the water and ate it like out of the water off the limb. And I'm like,
wow,
get it in the boat. And I always tell my co-angler, I'm like, can you please not cast in there? Like there might be another one in there. And I've had it happen before.
Right.
So I get up, I throw back in there. Next cast, as I'm swimming my jig out, like a 3-pound spotted bass comes out and eats my jig. So I got 2 for 6 pounds in like 2 casts in 20 seconds. And so I had my 5, and just towards the end of the day, it was like I had like 20 minutes left, and I roll up to like this dock in like a foot of water, and I'm like kind of creeping up to it. And I could like see something in the corner of my eye, because there's like this little black float. It was real shallow. Like the dock that I was actually fishing was out of the water the day before, because the water came up like almost 1.5 feet. And I look in the corner of my eye, and this like 4-pound largemouth just sticks his head out and just like stares at me, and then he just like slides back under the dock.
Right.
And I like put my talons down, skip my Senko under there, working, nothing. I'm like, come on. Like I sat there for like probably 15 minutes and never had a bite. But you can see everything around you. Like, you know, he's there. You know, maybe he's already been hooked. I don't know how much time I should spend on this fish. Well, like it must have been like my 45th cast in there. all of a sudden my line just starts taking off, and I'm like, no way.
Really?
Set the hook on it, and here it comes out. I think it weighed like 315, which was, for that lake, was big. And then we headed her in. I had just under 14 pounds that day, which I think put me in 4th or 5th or 6th place, something like that. Yeah, so then we roll into day 2, completely different. Well, no, it wasn't different conditions. We had some wind on day 1, and on day 2, it was like slick calm. Like it was absolutely glass. So I knew it was going to be really tougher than the first day. Well, I got out there. I had a long day, so I made my long run back and forth like I wanted to the first day. Well, that day I only ended up catching 4 fish, but there are 4 of the right fish for like 10.5 pounds. So when I came in, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make the top 10, 10 pounds, whatever. Well, it turns out I was sitting in 3rd place after everything grouped up on that day. Like, that's just how tough that lake was. Yeah. And then we go on to the final day, and unfortunately I only caught 1 bass, which terrible, but I still ended up finishing 7th. That's how bad it was.
Yeah. So now that sucks, but you're still probably looking at the points at this time and be like, okay, this is good so far. You get 1 more stop left. Where were you at in points?
I was in 2nd.
2nd. Okay.
By like 2 points.
So the last event, where's it at, and what's going on in your mind? How are you preparing for Grand?
Yeah, Grand Lake. So yeah, this was like a whole. We went straight from Smith to Grand because it was like back-to-back tournaments. So I really didn't have like much time to like think about it or like sit on the computer and be like, okay, these are the areas I want to focus on. So basically, we got to Grand, and I instantly started practicing. So now in 2019. That's where I won my first co-angler tournament. Was actually on Grand Lake in a similar time of year. It wasn't the same. It was the co-angler one I had was in September, and this tournament was in October. So it was quite a bit different. I had I wouldn't say a good practice. I'd say like an average practice. Not great. I mean, not a lot of confidence going into the tournament, but anything can happen. Yeah, this is where the story gets kind of crazy, but that first day of the Grand Lake tournament, so I roll up to my first spot, and I knew it was going to be hard to protect. You have a co-angler, the wind was gassing pretty good, and it was an offshore rock pile, and I was throwing crankbaits and stuff like that. My co-angler actually caught his 3 fish limit for 9 pounds in like the first 10 minutes of that day.
Wow.
Before I even hooked a fish. Yeah, before I even caught one. So, yeah, at that time I was, it's like the day that, you feel great for your co-angler because you're like, well, he's done already, I mean, he's going to be in. He actually went on to win the tournament, which was super cool.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there like, man, like on the day that this could not happen, like it happened, but at the same time going through my head, I'm like, I still got tons of time today. I still got till 4 o'clock, and we just pulled up. It's 8:15. So I did end up catching 2 keepers off that starting spot, which, was crucial looking back at it. So I think it was around noon. I made like a 25-mile run down to one of my other main areas. I got into this area. My actually ended up catching another one, like a 3.5 pounder behind me, which made me even more rattled. Right. And so I start going down. I start doing my thing. So in this pocket, I shook off some fish in practice. I started going down it, like first, whatever, it was like some brush on the bottom and dock and some shade. I lose like I say it was like a 3.5 pounder. It came up, got it halfway to the boat, Texas rig, just came off. I'm like, okay, whatever. It just came off. I check my stuff, get to the next spot. I had a bite in practice. Oh, sure enough, bam, get a good bite, set the hook. Same thing. These fish were coming out of like 13 feet of water, and it starts coming up. As soon as it gets up, you keep tight line on him. He's coming in. Now some bang, he comes up, jumps, comes off. This one was like another, 3 to 4 pounder.
Yeah,
I'm like,
another good one.
I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, is it just not meant to be at this point,
Right.
I mean, a Texas rig, I mean, I've done this 100 times. And so I get to the next next stretch where I had a bite, sure enough, get another bite, set the hook. This one almost makes it to the gunnel. Like I'm about ready to like swing it in, and before I even had the chance to swing it in, it comes off. Like a 2 3/4 3-pounder. And I'm like, at the time, and then now all of a sudden there's boats in there, and like I'm starting to get, you know, pretty flustered. Like I only got 2 fish in the box, and I'm this far away. I'm like, I don't know if it's gonna happen today. So I finally, you know, calm myself down. I get out of that area, start making my way back to the ramp. I catch one more keeper close to the ramp, and then I got like 10 minutes left to fish. I pull up to the retread hole by the ramp, and I catch like a, I don't know, 1.5 pounds or whatever it was. It was just a keeper, so I had 4. And I'm like, thank God I got 4. Like, we're going in. And
yeah, right.
You know, I got in, and yeah, I mean, I thought I blew it for sure. Like 9 pounds. I mean, I thought I blew, yeah, any chance I had at Elite Series or points or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So it that first day stung pretty bad. And then, so we roll into that second day. I knew I still had a chance, you know, a pretty good outside chance that I could make it. So I just put which probably, looking back on it, probably helped me a lot, because, you know, not being like nervous for points or anything like that, you can just go out and fish, you know, fish new water, fish whatever you want. So that's what I did after that first spot. I started where my co caught those, and either one of us never caught one there.
Never got one. Wow.
No, it was calm that day, and we needed wind, and it never worked. So I roll into my next area and start working through it, and I caught like a close to, it was a nice fish. It was like a 3.5, 4-pounder on top water, and that kind of keyed me in to kind of what I should have been doing that day or the day before too. And I kind of rolled with it, and at noon I had 3 over 3 pounds, which were really nice at the time. Well, then I start making my way back in, because I had to be in earlier that day.
Right.
And I start making my way back in. All of a sudden my motor starts shutting off, and I'm like, what is going on? Well, turns out, I didn't know at the time, but like, I'm pretty sure something was going on with my oil, I guess, on the sensor. I'm not sure what was going on. So it had me in limp mode for like, I don't know, a long time. And shut it off, turn it back on, shut it off, turn it back on. Finally, it would let me go. So I started going. I'm like, all right, like we're going, we're going to get back. We're going to catch 2 more somewhere. I don't know where we're going to catch them, but we got to catch 2 more fish, because I got 3 nice ones. I fished shallow on Grand Lake basically for the most part, other than some of the deeper areas I had. But like any isolated piece of cover, when it got later in the day that had shade on it, what seemed to be the key. So like towards the end of the day, I fished like 80, anywhere there was like a piece of brush in the water, whatever, like a dock, a float, a broken off limb, anywhere that had like a piece of shade and a piece of brush or a piece of hard cover somewhere. So I fished like, no, I should 80, but probably like 30 of those spots before I had to come in. Yeah, 2 of those spots had fish, and within the last, it was 3 minutes of the tournament, I caught a 3-pounder and swung in the boat, and I had to go in, and yeah, I didn't even have time to think about it.
So what place did you end up then?
I ended up,
because that was a good bag.
21st.
Nice. Okay.
I came from like, I think I was in like 80th the first day, and then I had almost 15 pounds, and I jumped up to, I think it was like 20th, 21st or something.
Very good. Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I mean, that's a crazy season, how things worked out, like taking us back day to day and how it all progressed. That's a pretty cool story. I like hearing those stories, because everyone, you know, just sees the end results and not
nobody knows the actual
stuff that actually went on.
Yeah, it was very stressful. Anyone that wants to fish the Bassmaster Opens, it's probably the most stressful thing I've ever done.
Right.
That's for sure.
Well, but you got the outcome you wanted, which is awesome. Wish you the best of luck, you know, going in this season here. Man, what are some things, you know, taking those skills that you learned growing up in Wisconsin and being able to apply it and fishing as a co-angler? You know, there's a lot of good things, but there's probably some things that, you know, some weaknesses. And I always like to ask one, what's a technique that, or a couple techniques or things that you really want to improve on as a tournament angler moving forward?
I'm not a fan of the crankbait. I'm I don't know. I mean, obviously you see it in like every tournament, guys winning tournaments on crankbaits. And I just, for whatever reason, I always try to like veer away from the crankbait unless I have to use it. Now in like crankbait situations, I'm talking like deeper cranking, like that like 10 to 20 foot range. I just never, it's never been like a strong suit of me. And I think it's something that I need to work on, especially for some of the tournaments we have coming up.
We're running out of time, but I got a couple other questions I want to ask you. When it comes to, being able to consistently do well in these events, obviously qualifying for the elites and your success back in Wisconsin, as well as across the country and other events, what do you think it is about you that allows you to be so consistent when it comes to tournament fishing?
To be consistent, like up here and down south, is like, I would have to say number one would be time on the water. Like as soon as I'm not working or I'm not doing something else, like I'll go out after work for 3 hours, even if I don't catch anything. Like I'm just messing with my electronics, messing with, anything, just new places I've never fished, just trying to, put myself in a situation where it's going to look similar when I go down south. So like, for instance, when I go down to a Smith Lake where there's 100 feet of water, I can like take that in a similarity and go down to like a Green Lake by us, which is like the deepest lake in Wisconsin, and go off and, practice, I mean, it seems simple nowadays, but something simple as like practicing your forward facing sonar skills, like getting your bait dialed in, where you don't have wasted casts, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, the consistent part's just like knowing what you're fishing while you want to fish it, but you have to be fishing it efficiently at the same time. So, I mean, yeah, fishing it efficiently is one of the main keys to being consistent here and down south.
Actually, that was some really good advice. Being on Green Lake or a body of water like that that's similar, or at least has some depth to it, and be able to experiment and practice and get up to speed. I think that's pretty incredible. That's some great information.
Yeah.
That really shows dedication, really.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the main thing that I've been trying to do, is trying to perfect my skills. I'm sure I got a lot of learning left to do. That's for sure.
Sure. And then what's your personal best out of Wisconsin and across the country when it comes to bass?
Personal best. I actually caught it this year. I caught it on Sturgeon Bay. It was a 6-pound, 12-ounce smallmouth.
Oh, that's a big one.
In the tournament, actually.
All right, close to a 7-pounder. That's a big fish anywhere in the country. Sturgeon Bay. Gosh, there's so many great big fish from there. My personal best comes from that body of water, and there's so many. God, those fish are just giants there.
I was on like a 6-pound curse. I couldn't get anything over 6, and then I finally did.
So this question is going to be a little interesting. I'd love to hear your answer. If let's say you weren't on the Elite Series this season, because this would be a tough one to answer if that was the case. Let's say you were stuck back in Wisconsin fishing the flowages. What is one bait, if I could say you can only use one bait the rest of the season to catch a fish on? That's all you could use. What would that bait be?
That'd have to be definitely a jig.
A jig, yeah.
Yeah. A
Football
small jig,
or
though.
flipping?
Flipping jig.
Okay, little finesse jig, flipping jig.
A small flipping jig. Specifically a structure jig from Strike King, the baby one, 3/8.
Okay. Nice. There you go. Let's take it a step further. What's the color going to be?
Blue Craw. Trailer
Blue
Menace,
Craw.
4-inch Blue Craw Menace. Same color.
So in the past, what have you the success with that jig and fishing those areas? Was it both smallmouth and largemouth, a variety of fish that you've been able to catch with that? Yeah. Both
on that jig. I love that jig. Anywhere around the country, I feel like I can just take that bait. For instance, actually, I caught 50% of my fish on it at Grand, almost 100% of them on it. No, I wouldn't say 100, like 80% of them on it at Smith. I didn't catch any of them on them at Pickwick, but that was a different beast.
Sure.
Yeah, but I just feel like I can take that bait anywhere and just.
Awesome. Well, how can people keep up with you? I know you got a lot going on this season. How can we follow you and cheer you on?
Yeah, you can follow me on my Instagram. My Instagram is just Jay Przekurat. It's just the letter J and then my last name Przekurat, which is spelled, well, it's Przekurat. It's kind of tricky.
Well, we're going to put that in the link for sure below.
Yeah,
yes.
Thanks. So you can also follow me on my Facebook, which is just Jay Przekurat. And then I'm also trying to start up a YouTube here in the close future. Hopefully next year for the Elite season, I can capture a lot of good moments on the boat and just like behind the scenes stuff like that. So my YouTube is going to be JP Fishing.
Very cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. I appreciate you coming on, sharing these stories. Fascinating.
Yeah,
Love to hear, how
yeah,
it
that
all
was
went
my
down.
whole my whole
That
open
was pretty
season,
crazy.
and,
Pretty crazy. I hope everybody
Yeah,
enjoyed that, and you're always welcome back, and we'll be following you.
awesome. I appreciate it, Travis.
Very cool. And as always, guys, until next time, we'll see you on the water.
Thanks so much for listening today. Make sure that you're subscribed to the show and follow us on Instagram at SmallmouthCrush. Also, the YouTube channel, SmallmouthCrush. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating and comment with a review below. And as always, until next time, we'll see you on the water.